Hello student, today we learn geography of standard 7. In that lesson number 3 tides and it is physical geography. In the previous video we have learned centrifugal and gravitational force. So student, open your textbook and see page number 10 and there is today we have to learn tides. Okay, see in the corner they are given next heading tides. The following factors are responsible for occurring of tides. See which factors are responsible for occurring tides. First, the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun as well as that of the earth. What factors or which factors? The gravitational pull of the moon and the sun as well as that of the earth. Okay. Then second factor is revolution of earth. See on page number 11. Revolution of earth around the sun and the indirect revolution of the moon around the sun. We know indirectly moon also revolve around the sun and that's why also tides occur. And centrifugal force generated due to the rotation of the earth. See here given figure 3.6 occurrence of tides. See there are we know and we have learned that there are two types of tides. See here gravitational force of moon and here between the moon and the earth there is centrifugal force act on that. And the moon is closer to the earth than the sun. We know that sun is far away from the earth. As compared to the sun, moon is closer to the earth. Hence, its gravitational force becomes more effective than that of the sun. And tides occur due to the relative positions of the moon and the sun and the earth. A place on the earth located at the opposite point of the place experiencing high or low tide and also experiences high or low tide respectively at the same time, and this is a result of centrifugal force. And see in picture or figure 3.6 and try to understand the locations of high and low tides on the earth. See, when there is a high tide at a 0 degree meridian, the 180 degree meridian also experiences high tide. See 0 degree at the same time where 180 degree at that also occurs tide. The meridians that are at right angles to those having high tide will experience low tide at the same time. Okay, and if it is high tide at 0 degree Celsius and 180 degree meridian, then at which meridian will low tide occur? Yes, obviously 90 and 270 degree. Then think about large rockets are used to go into the space away from the earth. Which force do they act against? See, this one is the question and think about it. Large rockets are used to go into the space away from the earth, and which force do they act against? Obviously when large rockets are used to go into the space away from the earth and acts against the gravitational force of the earth. Which force? Gravitational force of the earth. Yes, then see there are types of tides. As the timing of the tide varies from every day, the range of a tide also keeps on changing. See, generally the highest high tide occurs on full moon and new moon days, because on the days of the first and the third quarter the high tide is at its minimum, and we call it spring tides and another neap tides are two types of tides. In that first spring tide, on new moon and full moon days, the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon act in the same direction, and due to this, the total pull increases, and hence the tide on these days is much higher than the average high tide, and this is known as spring tide. See in figure 3.7, as the bulge at the high tide is greater, the water at low tide recedes much more, and the water level during spring tide is higher than the average high tides and lower than the average low. Okay, see there is a picture of spring tide. So see high tides and level of high tides in North Pole, and there is a gravitational force act between the moon and the earth. Neap tide. The second type of the tide is neap tide. And while revolving around the earth, the moon makes a right angle with respect to the earth and the sun twice a month, and this position occurs on the first and the third quarter of each month. On both these days, the forces of both the sun and the moon operates at right angles on the earth. And see figure 3.8. See on next page, neap tides. The gravitational pull of the moon, which is at right angles, also acts on sea water, and due to such conditions, the water level rise is less than usual at the time of high tide. Okay, see neap tide. There is a figure shown. See low tide portion, level of high tide, and low tide portion. See moon in which quarter line. Okay, similarly fall in water level is less than usual at the time of low tide, and this is because of the attraction of the sun and the moon are not complementary but at right angles to each other, and such tides are called neap tides. Neap tides are a little lower than the average high tides and a little higher than the average low tides. Okay, so we will learn two types of tides, and that are which spring tide and neap tide. See here, there is a extra information given. Do you know intertidal range? The difference in the water level of the high tide and the low tide is called the tidal range. In open seas, this range is about 30 centimeter. And however, towards the coastal areas, it goes on increasing, and along the coast of the peninsular India, the range is around 100 to 150 centimeter for most of the part, and the highest tidal range in the world is observed at Bay of the Fundy along the Atlantic coast of North America, and here the tidal range is about 1600 centimeter. And in India, the highest tidal range is in the Gulf of Kumbhaghat, and it is about 1100 centimeter. Okay, this is extra information given for you. Then now we will study what are the effects of tides. See, with the high tide, fish move into the creek, and this helps fishing activity. Okay. Then the second effect of tide is the tides clear the waste and hence the coasts become clean. Okay. Then ports do not get filled with sediments. And another effect, ships can move up to the ports during high tide. And during high tide, seawater can be stored in salt pans from which salt can be obtained. And the tidal force can be used to generate electricity. These are all effects of tides. Then a lack of an understanding of the timings of high and low tides may cause accidents to swimmers entering the sea. Okay, this is the bad effect. And then the tides help in maintaining the mangroves and the coastal biodiversity, and these are all effects of tides. Okay, we have learned today what there are two types of tides, that is neap tide and spring tide, and as well as effects of these tides. Okay, today we will stop here, and in the next video we learn next part of this chapter. Okay student, bye bye.